like you to give it up for Mr. David Knox. Eric Style.
Good morning. How are you? It is a pleasure to be back in Sydney, Australia with all my favorite Australian audience. And at the end of today, I'm going to have your listing presentation so fine-tuned that you'll get everyone that you ever want. Now, by the way, how many of you want to get every single listing you ever go on? Well, that's your first mistake. Because you don't want every listing, do you? How many of you right now have a listing you wish you hadn't taken? I rest my case. When you don't have enough listings, when you're working from scarcity instead of abundance, the fear of I have to get the next listing, and you become very desperate in trying to get it. Can the vendor sense when you're being desperate about getting a listing? If you were going out on a listing presentation tonight, and on the way out the door, somebody in your office said, oh, I know those vendors, they're not going to list with you. They've already listed with their brother. So you're not going to get the listing. And I said, well, then what the heck am I going out there for? And they'll say, well, they're just comparing you. They want to see you anyway. So you're going out the door on a listing, and you know you're not going to get it. On a 10 scale, how good will your presentation be tonight? It's got to be better than the best ever. Some people say, well, if I'm not going to get the listing, well, then I'm not going to do anything. I'm not even going to show up. On the other hand, the attitude is, I'm going to be so good. This will be my best listing presentation ever, even though you're not going to get it. What are you going to get? If you're not going to get the listing, what is your reward for competence? Cabot Robert, who is president of the National Speakers Association, tells a story. Years ago, I heard this. He was walking with his father in an old western town. And as they walked down the sidewalk, he tipped his hat to this woman who had walked by. And Cabot, for whatever reason, said, why did you tip your hat to her? She's not a lady. And Cabot said, I didn't tip my hat because she's a lady. I tipped my hat because I am a gentleman. So the idea of you do what you do because of who you are, not because of who your vendor is. It doesn't even matter if you get the listing. I want you to be so good you don't even care if you get it. One of the most important things is need satisfaction selling, to the point there's lots of cliches. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. We don't care how much you know till we know how much you care. Diagnose before you prescribe. These are rules to live by in a sale. When you sell a DVD player, the wrong way is to say, let me tell you about this fine DVD player. Why? It has a component out, 5 components, it has SVHS and has RCA. It's also a progressive Cascade, and it will play both PAL and NTSC. Right? And people going, what? What did you say? Wouldn't it be better to say, do you own DVDs? What kind of DVDs do you own? Will you be playing movies or will you be playing music videos? Will you be playing it on a 16:9 aspect ratio screen in high def? Or are you planning on doing the 4:3 ratio? Those are the kinds of questions you need to ask. And at the end, you can say, based on what you've told me, this DVD player works for you. And I want to make this point, maybe the most important point I will make today. The act of seeking the seller's needs creates more appearance of competence than anything else you'll ever say. I believe that the vendor will want to list with you before you start your listing presentation if you have asked them the right questions up in front. Sometimes we lead the witness. I was watching a guy interview a woman on buying a house, and he said, how many bedrooms do you want? She said, well, like 4 bedrooms. What would you say to that? Somebody says, I want 4 bedrooms. What would be your next question? Why? Why do you want 4 bedrooms? How are you going to use those? Instead, he said, oh, you want one for each kid? And she said, no, we want an office. Listen. And then he said, what else would you like in a house? And she said, I'd like a large yard. Oh, does your husband like to mow the lawn? and she said, no, we have a dog. Wouldn't it just be easier to ask open questions and listen? And this is one of those techniques that if you just want to make note of the difference between open and closed, open, who, what, when, where, why, how. I want you to know that in your notes, this looks like a horribly basic technique, but if I was coaching you one-on-one, the very first thing I would do is videotape you or audio tape one of your vendor dialogues, and I would play it back with a legal pad with a line down the middle, and I would write your questions on both sides of the line to see how many open questions you ask and how many closed questions. And when we start off with closed questions, so, are you from Sydney? No. Are you from Melbourne? No. Are you from Perth? No. Are you from Australia? No. Oh, you're from New Zealand? No. Are you from Christchurch? Right? And where are you from? It's just a lot easier to ask one open question. So if you take a look at the questions I'm going to present to you very quickly here, readiness to list. How many of you have a listing of a vendor who you now find out doesn't even want to move? So very early in a listing presentation, you ought to ask, have you definitely decided to move at this time? What issues need to be resolved? Because if the seller's not motivated to move, nothing else really is of matter, is it? So let's get to their motivation. And you need to ask your vendors the motivational-based questions. Have you definitely decided to move at this time? In fact, Rick Rushton had a question, a twist on this, that says, why have you chosen this time to move? Have I quoted you correctly? So why have you chosen this time to move? And they might say, well, actually, we haven't. Oh, well, wouldn't it be nice to know now? Urgency, kind of a twist on that. How soon? What would happen? And I think it's important to do follow-up questions. In fact, if you take a look at any question, when you ask somebody a question, what you get is the surface answer. And what you need to do is dig. It's kind of like peeling the layers of an onion and ask questions like, why is that important? Why is this important? And appeal to the heart of the matter. So if somebody says they need to have their home sold in 30 days, the 30 days isn't important. What is? What's important is, why is 30 days important? So get to the next level of motivation. Then get into competition. You need to find out if you're in competition. Would you agree? Experience. I think it's important to know how many times these vendors have moved, what experience they've had with other real estate agents. And in the next area, and this is critical, is to ask, what are your expectations of a real estate agent? One of the seminars I do is what sellers won't tell you unless you ask, and this is part of that seminar. Vendors will tell you how to get the listing. All too often, new agents turn to their other fellow agents and their managers and principals and say, how do I get this listing? How do I get this listing? You're asking the wrong person. Who should you be asking? You should be asking the vendor. In fact, you know what? That might not even be a bad question. I'm here tonight because I'd like you to hire me to market your home. What would I have to do to get your listing tonight? Of all the services a real estate agent provides, what do they consider to be the most important? And a simple question, what are you looking for from me? Next thing I will take you through very quickly is presentation styles. In a listing presentation, you start off at point A, and you want to end up at point B. And point B is getting a decision to either list with you or not list with you. There's a couple of different presentations. One is called a CAN presentation, which is a memorized presentation, straight line, every single word is memorized. But I know a lot of you in here go, oh, mate, I don't like canned presentations. I don't think that's the right way to go, so I wing it. I just go where the feeling takes me. I start at A, and then maybe I go where I feel. Oh, maybe we should have a little hug, kiss. Oh, let's go here. Oh, maybe I'll talk a little bit about feature benefits. We'll talk about our company. How are your kids? And maybe or maybe not will you ever get to B, because you don't know where B is, and B may have moved. Okay? So canned presentations don't seem to work very well. Wing it, that doesn't work. But what I'd like to take you through is the third option called planned. You're looking at that like, what the heck is that? Basically, it says as you move from left to right, you acknowledge that B exists in different places, and you don't even know where B is. So when you walk in the front door, you ask questions to find out if you definitely decided to move at this time. If the answer is no, maybe you stop. It's over. And then maybe you get to a point where you have the double option. You say, Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, it sounds to me like there's a lot for us to talk about tonight. But maybe before again, let me ask you, what would be the one thing that I could do that would be most important to you right now? And they might say, you know what? We got a flight out of here. We're heading up to Brisbane, and we just need to get it on the market. What would we need to do right now? Oh, I just need you here and here. Thank you very much. You guys go make your flight. You let me know when you get back, and we'll do all the paperwork later. Could that be an appropriate thing to do? And that's what that top line is. It's like, just get to B. You're all ready to do this presentation. They just want to list and get going. So this is just a way of saying that there are double options at the line of scrimmage throughout this presentation. Next thing I'd like to take you through is the structure of your marketing plan. I would start with the last step and say, Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, I would like to present to you now our marketing plan to satisfy the needs that you've raised. And there's 8 things that happen in the marketing of a home. And step number 8 is the one you're very much looking forward to, and that's the receipt of your net equity check, your final cash disbursement. But 7 things have to occur before that. And number 1 is we call marketing management. When your home was built, there was a general contractor who managed the electrical, the plumbing, sheetrock. When your home is sold, there's someone that manages the showing, the sale, the auction, the demonstration, the capturing of prospects, the closing, the paperwork, the financing. And what I'd like to do tonight is talk to you about how I am good at marketing management. Now, the next thing that happens is exposure to agents. Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, you may not be aware of this, but many of the homes that I list are sold not by me, but by fellow agents in our company, or in a lot of cases, we'll allow agents with other companies to work in. And we find that's a tremendous benefit for you. Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, I'm more concerned about you selling and moving than having me be the one that does the selling. So a large percentage of our homes are actually done through other agents. So I'm going to show you tonight what we do to get the other agents involved. Then I'll show you the classic, which is exposure to public. That's what you normally see. Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, have you ever looked at a property on a web or in an ad, called, and no one answers the phone? Oh, gosh, that happens all the time. That's why this next step is important, and that is called securing prospects. What good is it to expose your home to the public, have them call, and then nobody's there to answer? Let me show you how we capture business and how we respond and answer the phone. Then we need to demonstrate the home. And part of demonstrating, in fact, back to this lady, was finding out what do you need to do to make the home look good and show proper. Then after we demonstrate the home, we have to secure an agreement. It's called closing. It's selling and get somebody to sign a contract. And even after they sign a contract, they have to get financing and paperwork. And then the transaction closes. And then you get your net equity check. So what I'm going to suggest to all of you today is that if you like this structure, have that maybe even be the first page of your listing presentation manual. And say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, here's the 8 things that happen in approximately this order. And I'd like to take you through how we do that. Time to talk about closing. What is the definition of closing? Is it getting a yes or getting a no? The answer is getting a decision. The semantics of this are important. If your goal in life is to get somebody to say yes, you're always going to be under pressure. You'll always be attached to the outcome. I just want someone to make a decision. Would you folks like to buy this house? Well, you know, the bedrooms are too small. Okay, well then don't buy it. Yeah, we really like the location. Well, then you should buy it. Right, we really don't like the decorating. Well, then don't buy. But it's the best house we've seen. Well, then you'll need to buy. Same with the vendor. If you definitely decided to move it this time, well, we need to get $1.9 million for this place. Oh, but it's only a mobile home, so I don't think you will. So it sounds to me like you'll need to stay. Well, but we've been transferred to Dunedin, and I got to get there. Well, then you'll need to go. Well, we got to get more money. Well, then you'll have to stay. Well, I think my wife would kill me. Well, then you need to go. Do you want to stay or do you want to go? Just let me know and let go. But it is absolutely important that your mission is to get a decision. I think it was John yesterday, I apologize if I'm quoting the wrong speaker, who said that 90% of salespeople leave without asking them to buy. Salespeople who don't close have very skinny children. So, just get a decision. And I want to make this very clear. You know what? I don't care if you get the listing or don't get the listing. What I care about is that you know when you leave whether it's a yes or no. I was at the NAR convention a while ago, and a lady came up to me and said, David, I'm losing listings over commission. And I said, well, how do you know that? She said, well, at the end of my listing, I don't get it. And then a week later, I see it listed in the MLS with the discount company. And I said, well, did they bring up the commission objection while you were there? And she said, no. And I said, well, whose fault is that? Whose fault is it? It's hers for not asking. I said, you need to ask them to list with you so they will say no, so you can ask why, so you can find out it's a commission objection. Objections are not bad. They're good because it lets you know where you are. I don't care whether they say yes or no. Just give me a decision. One of the concerns I think many of you have is you're afraid to be too pushy, aren't you? But I would like to define the difference between being assertive and aggressive. Aggressive is being pushy. Aggressive is, do you want to buy this house? You better just buy it today. If you don't buy it today, it's going to be gone. It's a good house. You better buy it. I want you to buy it. You just buy it today. Forget about it. You got to buy it today. Don't give me any of that. Just buy it today. And it's very pushing. It's win-lose. You win the sale, and they lose what they want. And aggressive salespeople go for the closing because you want the commission, you want the sale. And that's wrong. That's bad. You don't like that. But here's the problem. You don't like it so much that oftentimes you won't even be assertive. Assertive says that you're firm with people. Do you think we should buy this? You know, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, we've been looking for a home for 3.5 years now. This is the very first home that you ever said met your needs and in your price range. And my suggestion to you, if you feel comfortable with this, I suggest you proceed. And it's a very gentle persuasion. If you went to your doctor and the doctor discovered you had a condition that would cause your death from smoking, what should the doctor do? Well, I really don't like to be pushy, so I'm not going to tell him to stop smoking. How's my health, doctor? Well, we think you're going to die. If you keep smoking, we think you're going to die. Assertive person says, you know, I understand the joy of smoking. I used to smoke too, so the joy of smoking, I understand that powerful. But I love you and your family. I know your 2 boys would want to come home to their dad for many years to come. And I think it's highly important that you win your life so your children can win their dad. And I'm going to suggest in as firm ways I can that you need to stop smoking now. One of the mistakes that salespeople make is you're waiting for them to close you so you won't have to. And we do this entire listing presentation. Here's another firm. So here's our 8-step marketing plan. And the final one is to get a closed transaction. And here's what our company does to get a 99% closed transaction rate so you get your net equity check. Wouldn't it be easier to wrap that up with, so would you like to proceed tonight? So Mr. and Mrs. Eller, how do you feel about our marketing plan that I presented so far? Oh, we're very impressed. That's exactly what we're looking for. Great. Then in order to do that, I've got to get your permission on a couple things. First of all, I need your approval here for showing that, and then I need your signature one more place for that. So if you guys right here, and if they sign it, you're done. If they go, wait, hey, we're not ready to list with you yet, then go, great, what else do we need to do? There are 3 ways to get commissions overcome: dialogue, value, and self-esteem. Dialogue I find to be very shallow. Dialogue is, well, if she's going to cut her commission, she knows where she can look with a cheap agent. If that's all you're looking for is a cheap commission, you're probably looking at the wrong agent. And we jump all over them with these snappy answers. I'm going to suggest you don't do that. The answer to commission cut clearly is no. But there's 2 ways to say no. You could say it like a bar bouncer, or you could do it like a Secret Service agent. Right? And a bar bouncer says, back up, buddy, you go and take 1 step forward, I'm going to shoot your dog. Whereas a Secret Service agent says, I appreciate the fact you'd like to get a closer view of the president, but I really need you to stand for me right over there if you don't mind. Thank you very much. Yeah, but I want to stand here to get a better view. I can appreciate you want a better view, but I really need you to stand over there. Why is the Secret Service agent such a gentleman to me? Because he's got a gun. He's got a .44 caliber Glock with 15 rounds of ammunition and 1 in the chamber. He's got a radio to call in his buddies, and a pair of hands will rip your head off. When you have that kind of power, you can be a gentleman. You have that kind of power, you can be a gentlewoman. So as people ask you to cut your commission, you don't have to say, no, I don't do that. You just smile and say, oh, I appreciate you asking. I think it's important that you know that the fees that I present to you are the best that I can offer. At this point, I've chosen to maintain our level of value rather than reducing our fees. And by the way, if you cut for one person and not another, what does that do to you? Some people say, well, I only have to cut my commission for the ones who ask. Well, then the problem is everybody else finds out you cut for the other person, don't they? And that's very dangerous. So if you give this guy a discount, then you go and try to get your full commission, the seller says to you, you come to me on the day that my daughter is to be married, and you ask me to pay full commission. Yet I know you have discounted for others. Why do you treat me with such disrespect? And your only answer is, I will say this one last time. I did not discount for those people. This is where I'll close. You say, Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, this piece of paper represents the full fee that you pay to me and my company. And the first thing you need to know is, I don't get all of it. Yeah, but that don't matter because I pay all of it. Well, that's a good point. Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, when I took you through my 8-step structured marketing plan, I mentioned to you that many of our sales are not necessarily by me, but by other companies, and we welcome that. I would like to make sure you move. So this full commission, I get half of it is split between the listing and the selling. And the half for the selling, I often share with the other agents because they're going to bring their buyer in. I let them work in so they can bring their buyer to you so you guys can move. This is the half that comes to us. Well, it gets split again. Half of it to me and about half to the broker owner. And this pays for heat, light, overhead, occupancy, boards, insurance, signage, all the websites, and all the technology. This is what pays for the services that help you folks move. This is the part that I get. And out of this, those videos I gave you, well, I paid for those myself. I have to go to conventions to improve my skills, such as Eric, and I pay for those myself. And then I have to pay taxes on what I earn, both in a provincial tax and or a state or a federal tax. So really, this is all I have left is my after-tax incentive for helping you folks move. So how much of it do you want? Thank you very much, Eric. Thank you. You guys have been great.